The ember cracks in the hearth, its hiss stretching into the silence like the sigh of a dying beast. Smoke curls upward, tracing invisible prayers upon the beams of the low timbered roof. Outside, frost thickens upon thatch and shutter, sealing the village in white silence. Yet within, a man stirs. His body is weary, but not spent, for the first sleep has run its course. He rises, bare feet pressing against cold flagstone, breath hanging in faint clouds before him. His wife lies still beneath the woolen covers, rosary clutched in her palm, lips parted in dream. The child whimpers in the corner cradle, then settles again, wrapped in linen still damp with the scent of smoke. This hour is no stranger to him. It is the hidden chapter of the night, a passage known to generations whose blood carried the rhythm of two slumbers. In this suspended time, half dream, half waking, the world shifts its weight. Shadows feel heavier, sounds carry further, and the boundary between flesh and spirit thins until it is scarcely there at all. Some call it the watch, others the waking hour. For monks, it is the office of matins, the time when the divine draws closest. For peasants, it is a pause between labors, a chance to mend nets, whisper prayers, or speak with those they love when the world is too weary for witness. He sits by the embers, hands stretched toward the faint warmth. The scent of charred oak lingers, mixed with the musk of damp wool. From beyond the shutter comes the muffled hoot of an owl, the restless stir of beasts in their stalls. In other homes, shutters creak open as neighbors too wake from the first sleep. A woman threads her loom by firelight, lips moving in silent song. A shepherd checks his tethered flock, ropes strained and fraying. In noble houses, scribes take up quills to copy letters by faint lamplight, their scratching mingling with the sigh of drafts through stone corridors. This interval is not merely the absence of sleep, it is its own world, a space for thought and for secret doing. Husbands murmur to wives in whispers meant only for that hour, when desire stirs as naturally as the embers are stoked. Mothers nurse infants, easing their cries into the silence. The lonely kneel at icons, whispering sins into the void. In cloisters, monks process in their woolen habits, the cold damp clinging to them, feet scuffing across flagstone as voices rise together in chant. Each note echoes against vaulted stone. Each candle burns like a fragile soul lifted against the dark. The man by the fire rubs his palms together, feeling the creases of callus, the scars of plow and axe. He does not question this waking. It is as natural as the frost on the sill. His father rose in such hours, his father before him. To wake between sleeps was no curse, no malady. It was rhythm. It was the cadence of a world unbroken by the humming wound of electricity. Night was not a void to be swallowed whole, but a landscape divided, two valleys with a ridge of wakefulness between. There is symbolism in this rhythm, though no scholar need tell it. Between first and second sleep lies a passage of vulnerability. Doors are tested, shutters checked, ropes tightened against wolves or thieves. It is the hour of thieves and of midwives, of solitary watchers and lovers who steal glances in silence. The veil between worlds trembles, dreams clinging to the skin, even as eyes open. And in that suspension lies an ancient recognition, that life itself is broken and mended, split and joined, half in shadow, half in light. He rises once more, crossing the room to check the shutter. It groans in protest, hinges swollen with winter damp. He presses it closed against the cold, feeling the sting of iron against his palm. From beyond, the wind rattles the bare branches, their black fingers scratching at the roof like whispers of the restless dead. For a moment he pauses, hands still, listening to the silence as though it might answer. Elsewhere, within the stone walls of monasteries, the silence is broken not by branches but by bells. Iron tongues strike, echoing into the frozen fields, calling the faithful to prayer. The monks gather in the choir stalls, cloaks heavy with dew, voices merging into a drone both solemn and eternal. Their chants rise like smoke, mingling with the stars that blaze above. In that hour, the night belongs to neither sleep nor day, but to devotion. For them, the in-between is holy. For peasants, it is survival. For lovers, it is intimacy. For all, it is a reminder of the fragile tether between flesh and spirit. The embers collapse in the hearth, sparks hissing into the ashes. The man lays another log upon the coals, watching as flames lick once more into being. Shadows leap upon the rafters, bending like dancers in the flicker. His eyes grow heavy, the rhythm pulling him downward again. He returns to the bed, the wool heavy upon his shoulders, the chill slowly giving way to warmth. His wife stirs at his side, her rosary slipping from her palm as she murmurs in sleep. The second slumber awaits, deeper than the first. It will carry him further into dreams, into visions both familiar and strange, as though the first sleep was but a doorway, and the second the true descent. He yields to it, the world softening into darkness once more, the tide of rest pulling him under. And yet, even as he surrenders, the memory of this hour lingers, an ember of wakefulness, a space between worlds. He does not know that centuries hence, this rhythm will be forgotten, consumed by light without shadow, by nights robbed of silence. He does not know that the sacred interval of waking will become a curiosity, a relic. To him, it is only the way of life, as natural as frost, as constant as breath. The fire hums low. The village sleeps again, joined in the second slumber. Shadows withdraw, silence deepens. In the stillness, the world holds its breath, poised for the next turn of time. And somewhere beyond, unseen but certain, dawn already gathers at the edge of the earth, preparing to spill light upon those who sleep unknowing. The rooster's cry cuts through the fading shadows, sharp and ancient, as if echoing the very first mornings of mankind. Its call trembles over rooftops dusted with frost, across fields still locked in silence. Inside the manor, a dog stirs, shaking loose the cold from his matted coat, paws scratching at the packed earth floor. The fire in the hearth has burned low again, leaving only pale embers glowing like the last watchful eyes of the night. The man turns upon his straw pallet, drawn reluctantly from the depth of his second sleep. For a moment, he lingers in the haze, his breath slow, the taste of ashes and wool thick upon his tongue. Beside him, his wife shifts, the rosary tangled in her fingers, the beads pressing faintly into her skin. Their child whimpers, sensing the shift of the house, the breath of morning pushing against the shutters. It is not sudden, this waking. It is the slow lifting of a veil, the world emerging once more from the embrace of night. A bell tolls in the distance, iron striking the air with hollow solemnity. From the monastery, the monks summon day into being with sound. The chant of matins fades into the first call of lauds, the morning hymn rising with the cold mist. Their voices, tired yet unwavering, stitch together the fabric of dawn. For them, time itself is woven by prayer, every hour marked, every silence given shape by discipline. The smell of wax lingers in the cloisters, mingling with the damp breath of stone. In the village, peasants emerge from their doors, cloaks drawn tight, boots sinking into frost-hardened earth. The fields glisten with pale light, each blade of grass a silver spear. They cough into their hands, rub their arms, stretch muscles stiffened by cold. Some lead oxen toward the plows, their wooden yokes creaking with the promise of toil. Others carry buckets toward the well, the water black and still, ready to mirror the first flames of sunrise. The rhythm is unbroken, just as sleep divides the night, labor divides the day. The manor, too, stirs. Servants rise from the rushes, sweeping floors scattered with husks and ash. The cook stokes the kitchen fire, the smell of smoke and coarse rye bread beginning to swell into the air. A boy runs to fetch water, shoulders straining beneath the weight of the bucket. In the great hall, a single torch sputters, dripping wax upon the flagstone as banners shift in the draft. Even here, among walls of stone, the morning is fragile, thin, cold, tinged with uncertainty. Bread is broken, crusts shared. Some dip them into thin broth, others into beer left from the night before. The taste is sharp, bitter, yet warming. The man eats with steady hands, the hunger of labor already upon him. He wipes his beard with his sleeve, rises, and ties a rope about his waist. Tools hang upon the wall, sickle, axe, and spade, their iron dulled by years of use. He takes them as a priest takes relics, reverently, knowing they are his covenant with the earth. This is no dawn of leisure, but of survival. The winter fields yield little, and hunger gnaws always at the edges of thought. The grain bins stand half empty, the salted meat dwindles, and every mouth in the household waits upon his labor. To falter is to starve. To rise is to endure. Each morning, then, is not just routine. It is judgment, repeated endlessly until death finally interrupts the cycle. And yet there is beauty here. The mist lifts as the first beams of sun lance across the land, painting frost into gold. Birds shiver awake upon the thatched roofs, their cries sharp and insistent. Smoke curls from every chimney, marking the living from the silent. A shepherd moves among his flock, staff in hand, the bells of sheep chiming softly in the distance. It is a music older than memory, the song of survival itself. The man steps into the field, the soil brittle beneath his boots. He breathes deep, the air cold enough to burn his lungs. His hand rests upon the plow, rough wood biting into his palm. He does not pray aloud, but the gesture is there, in the pause, in the tightening of fingers, in the way his eyes lift briefly toward the paling sky. The church tells him every act of labor is penance, every sweat stain upon his cloak a bead of devotion. Perhaps he believes, perhaps he only endures. But either way, the furrow must be drawn, the seed cast, the field made ready. And so morning begins, as it always has, with fire rekindled, with bread broken, with bells tolling, with plows cutting into frozen earth. It is the mirror of the night before. Just as the first sleep yielded to the sacred watch, the second slumber now yields to the sacred burden of labor. The cycle holds, relentless, yet strangely tender, for in its repetition lies survival, and in survival, a kind of grace. As the sun rises higher, the last remnants of the dream dissolve. But within the rhythm of prayer, of hunger, of toil, the memory of the night remains. How silence held its breath, how the ember cracked, how the world itself seemed to pause between sleeps. And in that memory, something unspoken lingers, a secret rhythm hidden in the marrow of all who live by frost and fire, by hunger and hope. The morning stretches onward, the day taking shape, yet shadows remain, long and patient, waiting for their hour to return. For night will come again, and with it the embers hiss, the second rhythm, the hidden chamber of waking between two worlds. The cycle will not break. Not yet. The candle sputters in its iron holder, dripping wax like pale tears onto the wooden table. The man pauses before it, his roughened fingers tracing the sign of the cross across his chest. Morning has begun, but the weight of night still lingers, and with it the awareness that every hour belongs not just to labor, but to forces unseen. Faith is not an ornament in his world. It is the very thread by which life is stitched together, fragile and fraying. The church bell tolls again, heavier now, commanding not suggestion but obedience. Its voice carries across fields, through thatched cottages, over the frost-cracked earth. It calls not only monks but peasants, merchants, lords, and children alike. The bell is more than sound. It is the law of heaven made iron, binding men and women to cycles of prayer as tightly as chains bind a prisoner. In the cloisters, candles flare against damp stone, incense curling into the vaulted air. The Latin chants rise, unintelligible to most ears, yet feared and revered all the same. To question them is unthinkable. To live outside their rhythm is to be lost. Superstition walks alongside this faith like a shadow at noon. The man's wife places a sprig of rosemary above the door, muttering that it will ward off the devil's wandering hand. The shepherd knots charms into the rope around his flock, fearful of wolves, but more fearful of unseen curses. A mother presses a small relic, said to be a saint's tooth, into her child's palm before sending him to the fields, whispering prayers that sickness will pass him by. Faith and fear mingle as naturally as smoke and wind. The relics are not questioned, nor the rituals. A rooster crowing at the wrong hour is an omen, a candle blowing out suddenly a warning. Dreams, too, are weighted with meaning. A black dog in the night foretells death. A white dove signals grace. Even the rhythm of biphasic sleep is steeped in belief. The waking hour between rests is not merely practical, but spiritual, a time when prayers pierce deepest, when the soul is most vulnerable to both angels and demons. The church exploits this mystery with subtle power. Priests warn that failure to rise and pray at these hours opens a doorway to sin. Monks preach that demons roam freely between the first and second sleep, seeking entry into weakened hearts. Only prayer, only obedience can bar the gates. The man listens, as all must listen, for to resist the church is to resist the only authority capable of interceding between mortal flesh and eternal fire. In an age where famine, plague, and war circle like wolves, the promise of salvation is a coin too costly to discard. Inside the chapel, the air is thick with candle smoke and whispered confessions. Knees press into cold stone, lips brush wooden icons smoothed by centuries of kisses. The smell of sweat and incense mingles, rising in waves as the congregation bends and rises in rhythm. For a moment, all stand equal, lord and serf, mother and monk, bound by the same chants, the same fears. Outside, the wind rattles the doors, as if reminding them that beyond these walls, Winter waits, hunger waits, and death itself waits. The man leaves with ash pressed upon his brow, the faint taste of salt from holy water on his lips. The ritual comforts him, though hunger still gnaws. His wife ties a small cloth around his wrist, embroidered with a cross, whispering that it will keep the evil eye at bay. He believes her, because to doubt would be to invite despair. Faith is not luxury. It is shield, staff, and bread. Without it, the night would be endless, and the waking hours between sleeps would belong not to reflection, but to terror. As he steps into the fields, relics hidden in his tunic, charms tied to his belt, the sky brightens above. The sun burns away the mist, revealing a world both harsh and holy. Every furrow he plows is penance, every seed he plants an offering. The earth may yield or refuse, but his soul must still be accounted for. He wipes sweat from his brow, though the morning air is still cold, and mutters a prayer to Saint Isidore, patron of farmers, his words swallowed by the creak of wood and the call of crows. Yet beneath the prayers, beneath the rituals, lies a hunger that faith cannot fill. The bins are half empty, the salted meat gone sour, the winter too long. Rumors drift of plague in the next village, of children buried beneath frost, of fields gone barren. The man does not speak of it, nor does his wife, but the silence between them grows heavy. Faith can carry the soul, but the body still weakens, still trembles beneath the weight of hunger. And so the day labors on. Prayer and toil, relic and charm, hope and fear woven into each breath. But as shadows begin to lengthen, as the wind sharpens, a darker truth rises. Faith alone cannot hold back famine, nor relics shield against pestilence. The world tightens its grip, and survival itself becomes prayer. The bell will toll again at dusk, summoning them once more, promising salvation beyond the grave. But before the sun falls, before the embers are stirred anew, the man must endure what faith cannot soften, the gnawing emptiness in his stomach, the specter of death walking among the huts, the knowledge that another winter may claim more than charms and chants can save. Night will come again, and with it the divided rhythm of sleep, the fragile sanctuary of the waking hour. Yet even that ancient rhythm cannot silence the approach of famine, the whisper of pestilence on the wind. The first cough comes from the cottage down the lane, brittle as dry wood snapping in the frost. At first, no one speaks of it. People turn away, muttering that it is only the winter chill, only a passing fever. But then another cough, then another, carried on the air like a curse, woven into the village hum. The sound grows familiar, rasping and wet, breaking the night silence between the first and second sleep. Soon it is no longer just coughs. Children grow pale, lips trembling with fever. Mothers rock them by the embers, whispering prayers not to saints of glory, but to saints of mercy. The man walks into the field and finds the earth unyielding. The soil is hard as stone, frozen too long, too deep. He drives the plow again and again, but it barely cuts the surface. The oxen strain, their breath steaming, eyes rolling in frustration. Hunger gnaws at the edges of the day. The grain bins are nearly bare, and the salted fish stinks of rot. Each meal is smaller than the one before. Crusts of bread thinner, broth more water than marrow. At night, children cry themselves to sleep, not from fear of demons or restless dreams, but from the simple, sharp ache of empty bellies. The church bells toll, louder now, as if trying to drown the coughs and cries. Priests move through the streets with relics and holy water, their robes heavy with the scent of incense. They press crucifixes to the lips of the dying, their voices steady, even as their hands tremble. God's wrath, they whisper, a trial of the faithful. Villagers believe because they must, because to believe otherwise is to face despair alone. They wear charms around their necks, sprigs of rosemary tucked into cloaks, tiny bones of saints tied into cloth pouches. The air itself seems poisoned, heavy with fear, as though even breath has turned against them. Superstitions multiply like shadows at dusk. Some say witches walk in the night, cursing cattle, spoiling bread. Others claim the dead wander, spreading sickness with every step. Fires are lit in doorways, smoke rising into the cold sky in the hope it will drive away unseen demons. Doors are marked with chalk crosses, shutters nailed shut. Yet still the pestilence seeps in, like a thief that knows every lock, every weakness. The man buries a neighbor in frozen earth, the soil cracking under the weight of the spade. The grave is shallow, the ground too hard to dig deep. He lowers the body wrapped in coarse cloth, the smell of decay already clinging to his clothes. Ravens gather on the bare branches overhead, their black wings folding and unfolding, their cries like mocking laughter. He does not look at them. He cannot. At night, between the first and second sleep, the village is haunted not by silence, but by wailing. Mothers call out to children who will never answer again. Fathers curse the sky, fists raised before collapsing in the snow. The man lies awake, staring into the ember glow, hearing every cough, every cry, every shuffle of feet, carrying the dead towards shallow graves. His wife whispers prayers, her lips trembling against the rosary beads, her eyes hollow with dread. He takes her hand, but neither of them speaks, for words are ash in the mouth when hope is so thin. The pestilence is not the only enemy. Hunger stalks the survivors with equal cruelty. The animals grow lean, bones sharp beneath hides. The bread is ground from husks and weeds, bitter and hard, splintering in the teeth. Children chew leather straps to quiet the gnawing. Some boil roots that taste of earth, others scrape moss from stones. Every mouthful is a gamble, every swallow a prayer. And when nothing remains, the strongest eat first, the weakest fade into silence. The priest preaches that famine and plague are the scourge of God, punishment for sins unseen. The villagers bow their heads, trembling, though inside they wonder what sins could warrant such cruelty. The man looks at his hands, cracked and bleeding from labor, at his children's hollow cheeks, and cannot reconcile their suffering with any crime. Yet he kneels in the chapel still, because kneeling is all that remains when standing feels impossible. As the season deepens, the graves multiply. The earth, once frozen, becomes soft with thaw, easier to dig, but heavier to bear. The smell of death lingers in the air, clinging to hair, to clothes, to breath itself. The bell tolls each day, not to call the faithful to prayer, but to mark another soul lost. The sound becomes the heartbeat of the village, steady, relentless, inevitable. And yet, even in this, life clings. A child's laughter breaks through the cries, fleeting as birdsong in a storm. Lovers still find each other in the dark, seeking warmth in arms that may not be there tomorrow. A mother still sings lullabies, though her voice cracks, though her eyes are red. The man still rises each dawn, still sets his hands to the plow, still whispers a prayer into the cold air, though faith feels thin as smoke. The ember hisses in the hearth again, but now the silence around it is different. It is heavy with absence, with names that will not be spoken again. The village endures, but it is not the same. Hunger has carved its lines into every face, and plague has written its story into every home. And beyond the horizon, whispers grow of war. As if famine and pestilence were not enough, men now speak of banners raised, of swords sharpened, of kings demanding blood. The man listens in silence, the weight of hunger and loss already upon his shoulders. War feels like another shadow on the road ahead, a shadow that may yet swallow what little remains. The wind carries the sound before the soldiers arrive. At first, it is faint, a murmur woven into the winter air, the low thud of drums, the iron jangle of harness and chain. Then comes the echo of hooves striking frozen earth, sharp as thunder rolling across the plain. The village stiffens at once. Men turn from their fields, women clutch their children closer, dogs slink into silence. For weeks, rumors have whispered of it, armies moving like storms, gathering men as rivers gather rain. Now the storm has come. A banner rises above the mist, its fabric torn, its colors dulled by mud. Upon it, a cross gleams faintly, red as blood against the pale morning. Behind it, knights ride in steel that catches what little sun pierces the clouds. Their visors hide their faces, but the sound of their arrival, iron groaning, leather creaking, hooves pounding, speaks more loudly than words. At their side march soldiers on foot, spears bristling like a forest, shields slung across backs scarred by older wars. The man stands at the edge of his field, the plow abandoned behind him. His breath fogs the air, but he does not move. He knows what this means. Every man with strength in his arms is needed. Every household must give. His stomach clenches, not with hunger this time, but with dread. His wife steps from the doorway of their home, clutching the rosary that has not left her hand since the first cough came to the village. Her eyes meet his, full of the silent plea she does not speak. But silence cannot turn armies aside. The captain dismounts, his boots striking hard against the frozen earth. He does not waste words. His voice is harsh, carrying over the village like a blade drawn in daylight. By order of the king, by duty of Christendom, you will march. France stirs. Enemies gather. God demands your service. His words are more ritual than persuasion. Phrases honed by centuries of war, repeated so often they no longer sound human but liturgical. Each syllable is an iron nail driven into the coffin of choice. The villagers murmur, some dropping to their knees, some clutching their children tighter. One man protests, claiming sickness in his house, famine in his stores. The soldiers drag him forward, his cries cut short by the butt of a spear against his ribs. The rest fall silent. Resistance has no voice here. The man feels the pull of two worlds tearing at him. Behind him, his family, thin, hungry, trembling, their survival resting on his labor. Before him, the captain, the banner, the king's demand. If he stays, his family may starve. If he leaves, they may starve faster. If he resists, they all may die. There is no choice that is not ruin. His hand trembles at his side, brushing the wooden haft of his plow, as though part of him wishes to raise it like a weapon. But he does not. The plow is no sword, and defiance is no shield. The soldiers press a token into his palm, a crude cross carved into wood, proof of his conscription. Its edges are rough, splinters digging into his skin. He closes his hand around it, as though grasping the weight of his own fate. His wife's breath catches behind him. He does not turn, for he knows that if he looks at her, if he sees the tears forming in her eyes, his resolve will break. He steps forward instead, joining the line of men gathered from the village, faces pale with hunger and fear. The march begins at dusk, when the fields are black with frost and the moon rides low above the bare branches. Torches sway in the wind, their flames bending like reeds. The sound of boots and hooves merges with the low growl of drums, a heartbeat of war that grows louder with each step. The man glances back only once. His wife stands at the doorway, her figure framed by the weak glow of their hearth, a shadow already swallowed by distance. The rosary glimmers faintly in her hand, a chain of prayer too fragile to bind him home. The road stretches ahead, mud frozen into ruts, stones biting at weary feet. Around him, men whisper of France, of glory, of loot to be won. But beneath their words is another truth, fear, raw and unspoken. They have heard the tales of battlefields, of blood-soaking earth, of screams that never end. They have heard of villages burned, of men left rotting in fields, of crows fattened on the flesh of the fallen. They march not for glory, but because they cannot do otherwise. Night falls deeper, and the stars emerge, cold and distant. Between the drumbeats, silence returns, thick and suffocating. The man feels it press upon him, the same silence he once knew between the first and second sleep. But here, it is no sacred pause, no hour of prayer. It is the silence before slaughter. The hush before dawn breaks over battlefields red with blood. He clutches the wooden token in his hand, its splinters biting deeper, and wonders if he will ever see the frost upon his own fields again. The ember of his hearth, the cry of his child, the whispered prayers of his wife, all seem already like memories fading into shadow. And yet, somewhere within, a question stirs. If God truly watches, if saints truly guard, then why must men walk into the jaws of death at the bidding of kings? The question burns like a coal in his chest, but he does not speak it. The drumbeats would drown it, the soldiers would punish it, and the church would condemn it. He buries it deep, alongside the fear that already gnaws at his bones. The road bends, the torches vanish into the mist, and the march continues. Ahead lies war, banners unfurling, swords flashing in firelight. Behind lies famine, plague, and graves that hunger for more. The man walks between them, caught in a world where every step is sacrifice, where every breath is borrowed, where tomorrow is never promised. And so the chapter turns from hunger and pestilence to steel and blood. The ember of survival flickers, fragile against the storm of war that now gathers on the horizon. The camp is not built. It grows like a wound upon the earth. By dusk, the soldiers spill across the frozen meadow, hammering stakes into the ground, hoisting tents of coarse linen patched by many campaigns. The air is thick with the smell of sweat, dung, and smoke. Fires bloom one by one, their orange tongues licking upward, painting faces hollowed by hunger and shadows. Above them, the banner of the king flutters, tattered but defiant, its crimson cross snapping against the wind. The man lowers himself to the ground beside strangers, who are suddenly brothers. They share not blood but burden, not kinship but the same chain of fate. Around him, men strip off boots stiff with frost, rub their feet, curse softly into the night. Some gnaw at hard bread so stale it cracks teeth. Others pass a flask of ale, each sip a momentary warmth against the cold. He accepts none of it at first, staring instead into the fire. The sparks rise like fleeting souls, vanishing into the black sky. The priests move among the ranks, their cloaks sweeping mud and straw, eyes dark with certainty. They carry relics, splinters of the true cross, bones of long-dead saints, bits of cloth stained with holy blood. Each soldier bends to kiss them, lips brushing relics with trembling reverence. God is with you, the priests murmur. Die well, and heaven is yours. Their words are honeyed and bitter all at once, a promise and a warning. The man feels their weight settle in his chest. Die well, as if death is certain, and only the manner of it remains to be chosen. Around the fires, superstition mingles with prayer. A soldier knots twine around his wrist, muttering it will turn blades aside. Another scratches symbols into the dirt, whispering charms against arrows. One man, eyes hollow from too many campaigns, swears he has seen the crows already circling overhead, waiting for the feast. Laughter follows his words, brittle and forced, the kind that cracks but does not heal. Beneath it lies silence, an understanding no man dares name. The man thinks of his wife, of her hand pressed to the rosary, of her eyes heavy with dread. He imagines the hearth without him, the plow rusting in the field, the cries of his children fading into hunger. He tightens his fist around the wooden token of conscription, its splinters biting deep. He tells himself he must endure, if not for himself, then for them. But in the stillness between drumbeats, doubt creeps in like frost under a door. Night thickens, the fires burn low, the cold gnaws deeper. Some men sleep, wrapped in cloaks, breath rising in pale clouds. Others pace the edges of the camp, spears in hand, eyes darting into the dark as though expecting shadows to rise and take shape. In the distance, wolves howl. The sound slides through the ranks like a blade. Men cross themselves, some whispering prayers, others muttering curses. The man cannot sleep. He sits by the dying fire, watching the coals collapse into ash. The silence reminds him of the interval between the two sleeps at home, the sacred hush when the world seemed to hold its breath. But here it is not sacred. Here the silence is heavy with the smell of iron, with the weight of unspoken dread. It is the silence before the storm, the pause before men are torn apart in mud and steel. A captain strides past, armor creaking, his voice sharp as he orders men to sharpen their blades, to oil their bows, to ready their shields. The sound of whetstones rises, harsh and steady, sparks leaping as steel meets stone. The rhythm becomes a dirge, a hymn to death itself. The man lifts his blade, dull and scarred, and sets it to the stone. Each scrape feels final, each spark a reminder that tomorrow, this steel will drink blood. Above the camp, the sky is vast and pitiless. Stars burn cold, distant, unblinking. The man tilts his head upward, whispering a prayer not to saints or priests, but to the silence itself. Let me return. Let me see them again. The words vanish into the dark, unanswered, like countless prayers before. The drum sounds once more, a low thrum that rolls across the camp, silencing voices, freezing laughter. Men rise, some crossing themselves, some spitting into the mud, all knowing what it means. Tomorrow, the march continues. Tomorrow, banners will rise against banners, and steel will clash in mud, thick with blood. Tomorrow, the storm breaks. The fires dwindle. The camp falls into uneasy rest. In his heart, the man feels the ember of fear glow brighter, not dimmer, as though it feeds on silence. His eyes close at last, though not in peace. Dreams come, heavy and fractured. A field of crows, a plow rusting red with blood, his wife's face fading into smoke. He wakes with a start before dawn, the drum already beating again, the sky bruised with the first light. And so the march resumes, not into fields of grain, but into fields of slaughter. The rhythm of sleep, the rhythm of labor, the rhythm of prayer, all give way now to the rhythm of war. The torches rise, the banners snap, the ground shakes. The storm has arrived.